Have you ever done something and immediately thought, why did I just do that? Like you said something you regret, you reacted in anger, you overthought something for hours, and you felt jealousy creep into your heart. Maybe you judged someone, or maybe you had a thought that made you stop and think, wow, where did that even come from? And afterwards, you just sit there thinking, what is wrong with me? If you've ever felt like that, like you're somehow uniquely broken, like everyone else seems to have their life together except for you, today's Bible passage might actually set you free. Because the book of Romans says something really surprising. You're not uniquely broken, you're human. And honestly, realizing that is actually the beginning of freedom. Hey everyone, welcome back to Unshaken and Unashamed. I'm genuinely so glad you're here today. Whether you've been watching this series from the beginning or this is the very first video of mine you've clicked on, welcome. Seriously, I'm really glad you're here. Grab a coffee, a tea, get comfy. Imagine we're just sitting together chatting about life and faith. Because honestly, that's what this channel is meant to feel like. It's what it's designed for. It's not a lecture. It's not a perfect Christian talk where someone pretends they've got everything figured out, because I definitely don't. It's more like a conversation between friends trying to follow Jesus in real life. Because real faith isn't polished. Real faith is messy sometimes. Real faith is asking questions like, why do I keep doing things I know I shouldn't? Why do I feel like everyone else has their life together except for me? And does God still love me when I mess up? And today's episode actually touches on all of that. Because today we're continuing our Romans Bible study, and the episode is called Why We All Need Saving. Now, I know that a phrase can make people a little uncomfortable. Need saving. Sometimes when people hear that, maybe they imagine Christians pointing fingers at everyone saying, okay, so you're terrible, and you're terrible. But that's actually not what the Bible is doing here. The Bible isn't trying to shame you. It's trying to explain the reality of the world that we're living in. And sometimes the most freeing thing in the world is when someone finally tells you the truth about what's actually going on. Because you can't fix something you refuse to acknowledge. And the book of Romans is basically Paul saying, okay, let's be honest about the human condition. So today we're looking at Romans chapter 3, verses 10 to 24. But this passage is actually part of a much bigger argument Paul has been building since the beginning of the letter. So in Romans chapter 1, Paul talks about humanity rejecting God. In Romans chapter 2, he talks about religious people who think they're morally superior. And by the time we get to Romans chapter 3, Paul basically says, okay, let's clear something up. No one gets to stand above anyone else. No one is naturally righteous. And he says it very clearly in Romans chapter 3, verse 10. There is no one righteous, not even one. Now that's a very bold statement. Paul doesn't say most people struggle. He doesn't say some people have issues. He says not even one. And if we're honest, part of us kind of wants to push back on that a little bit because we think, well, I know some pretty good people. They haven't done anything wrong. Maybe you know someone who is incredibly kind, someone generous, someone who always helps others, someone who sacrifices for their family. And the Bible actually acknowledges that. Humans are capable of incredible good. Why? Because we're made in the image of God. Genesis chapter 1 verse 27 says, so God created mankind in his own image. So that means that every human being has dignity, value, purpose. But the Bible also says something else happened. The Bible says that sin entered the world, and that image became distorted. Not erased, but distorted, which is why humans are capable of such beautiful things, but also terrible things. Think about it. Humans build hospitals, but humans also start wars. Humans create art and music and literature, but humans also exploit one another. We're capable of incredible compassion and incredible cruelty. And one of the most interesting things about the Bible is that it never pretends humans are basically perfect people who just occasionally mess up. It says something deeper. Sin didn't just affect our actions, it affected our nature. Think about it like a computer with a virus. So if a computer has a virus, it doesn't just affect one file. It spreads into the entire system. And that's what sin did to humanity. Sin affected our thinking, our desires, our motivations. Sometimes we want the right things, but for the wrong reasons. Sometimes we do something good, but, we secretly want recognition or attention. Sometimes we help someone, but we also want people to notice how kind we are. Our hearts are complicated. Jeremiah chapter 17 verse 9 says, "The heart is deceitful above all things," which means sometimes the person that we fool the most is ourselves. We convince ourselves that we're fine. We convince ourselves we're better than we really are. But Romans gently pulls back the curtain and says, let's be honest, we all need grace. And honestly, that honesty is freeing because pretending to be perfect is exhausting. And if we're honest, we see that brokenness not just out there in the world, but inside ourselves too. Have you ever had a moment where you thought, why did I just do that? Maybe you snapped at someone you love. Maybe jealousy crept in. Maybe comparison. Maybe pride. And afterwards, you're thinking, that's not who I want to be. And those moments can make us feel like something is deeply wrong with us, like we're uniquely broken. But Romans tells us that you're not uniquely broken, you're human. Romans chapter 3 verse 23 says, "For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God." All. Every single person. Which means the struggle that you feel, that tension inside of you, that battle between wanting to do good but sometimes failing, that is part of the human condition. Let me give you an illustration. So imagine the goal is to jump across the Grand Canyon. Some people jump 3 feet. Some people jump 6 feet. Maybe an Olympic athlete jumps 10 feet. But the Grand Canyon is about 8 miles, so it's about 27 kilometers wide. So it doesn't really matter how far you jump because everyone is still going to fall short. And that illustration explains that, when we compare ourselves to other people, we sometimes feel like certain people are doing better spiritually. We think things like, well, at least I'm not as bad as that person. But the real comparison isn't between you and another human. The comparison is between us and God's holiness. And once you understand that, something amazing happens. Pride disappears because suddenly we realize we're all standing in the same place. Every single one of us needs grace. No one gets to stand on a higher platform. And I guess that's why Christianity should produce the most humble people in the world. Because Christians aren't people who think they're better than everyone else. Christians are people who realized, I needed mercy. Now, here's something important. When Paul says everyone has sinned, he's leveling the playing field. Because humans love to rank people. Good people, bad people, really bad people. But the Bible doesn't divide humanity that way. Instead, it says something simpler. All have sinned. Which means, we're all bad people. It also means that the problem isn't that some people are especially broken. The problem is that every human being is separated from God because of sin. Isaiah 59 verse 2 says, "Your iniquities have separated you from your God." And this is where a lot of people misunderstand Christianity. Sometimes people think Christianity is mainly about following rules. Do this, don't do that. Be a good person. But the Bible says the real issue is much deeper than rule breaking. It's relationship breaking. Sin damaged our relationship with God. And if you've ever experienced a broken relationship in your life, you know how painful that can be. Distance hurts. But the incredible thing about the gospel is that God didn't leave the relationship broken. He came to restore it. Romans chapter 5 verse 8 says, "But God demonstrates his own love for us in this. While we were still sinners, Christ died for us." Not after we fixed ourselves, not after we became perfect. Christ died for us while we were still sinners. Jesus himself said in Mark chapter 2 verse 17, "It is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick." Jesus didn't come looking for perfect people. He came looking for people who knew they needed help. You don't have to clean yourself up before coming to Jesus. That would be like saying, "Okay, I'll go to the hospital once I heal myself." Doesn't make sense. The hospital is where you go to be healed. And Jesus is the same way. He welcomes people exactly where they are. Broken, struggling, confused, searching. That's who Jesus came for. And honestly, that should make us breathe a little easier. Because I don't know about you, but I definitely don't have everything figured out. And following Jesus isn't about pretending to be perfect. It's about being transformed. Philippians chapter 1 verse 6 says, "He who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion." God begins the work and God finishes the work, which means Christianity isn't about you fixing yourself. It's about God transforming you. And that's why we need saving, because we can't rescue ourselves. Imagine someone drowning in the ocean. They don't need advice. They don't need encouragement from the shore. They need someone to pull them out of the water. And that's exactly what Jesus does for us. He pulls us out of the water. Romans chapter 3 verse 24 says, "We are justified freely by his grace." Freely. It's a gift. Jesus lived the perfect life we could never live. And then he went to the cross and took the punishment for sin. Your sin, my sin, the entire world's sin. All of it. So that forgiveness could be offered freely. And that's why the gospel is such incredible news, because the story doesn't end with everyone has sinned. It continues with everyone can be forgiven. Let me pause for a second and ask you something. When you think about God, what do you imagine? Do you imagine someone disappointed in you? Someone distant, maybe? Someone angry? Someone waiting for you to mess up again and again? A lot of people carry that image of God, but the cross shows us something completely different. A God who runs toward broken people, a God who pursues us, a God who loves us so deeply that he stepped into human history to rescue us. And if you're watching this today and you feel like your past disqualifies you from God, I want you to hear this. Your mistakes don't shock God. Your struggles don't surprise him. And your past definitely does not cancel his grace. The cross already accounted for all of it, which means the invitation of Jesus still stands today. Come as you are. Thank you so much for being here today. I really enjoyed putting this episode together, and I really hope it encouraged you. And in the next episode, we're going to talk about something really beautiful in Romans, what it means to be justified by faith and to have peace with God. And trust me, if you've ever wondered whether God is actually at peace with you, you're not going to want to miss that one. If this video encouraged you, feel free to share it with someone who might need to hear it. And remember, you are not uniquely broken, you are not beyond grace, and you are deeply, deeply loved by God. Stay unshaken, stay unashamed, and I'll see you in the next episode.